I don't want to be a boss. I want to know what it would be like if success meant how many times did I sit naked by the river feeding berries to my friends? Did I heal heartbreak and bring generational curses to their end? I want to know real wealth, laughter and wild gardens built by hand. I want the kind of intelligence birds have to cross oceans with no map. I don't want to be a boss. I want to rage against the machine ecstatically until the last day that it stands. I am Ebyän Zanini. My heritage is Somali and Italian, born in the US, also known as Turtle Island. And I currently reside in Ibiza. My love and passion and offering in this world is a weaving of spoken word with ritual art and theater, in performance and also in dance and recorded visual storytelling. And I also have a school called Mother Tongue, which is a learning collective where we bridge decolonial philosophy with spirituality and feminine revival and mysticism. So that's me. Well, I think that it's worth questioning the question if we need to have a peaceful spirit, because oftentimes in an effort to be peaceful, we bypass or disassociate a very holy and righteous anger that might support and propel us forward as humans. But in particular, I speak this for marginalized groups, for women, for Black, Brown, Indigenous people in the world. Because our anger has not been welcome, we have learned to contort and to appease, let's say, the default culture. And rather than focusing on peace, a lot of liberation movements like the Black Panther movement said, we're about justice and freedom. And when we say freedom, we mean freedom of all shackles, freedom from domination, freedom from supremacy, freedom from types of apartheid, but also a freedom in a way for us to function like an ecosystem, to be allowed to be different, to not be forced into some kind of monoculture form of being or valuing each other. And so that question, I think our goal eventually is peace. But to get to peace, we need justice. And to get to justice, sometimes anger is necessary. Where I feel the difficulty comes is how we can use anger as a force of regeneration, not as a force for only some kind of harm or violence. So I know that the rage of the feminine is something that a lot of women in the world have been reclaiming and yearning for, and are finding their voice and their power after a long time through touching into a type of rage that is rooted in love. And so that's the orientation also that I would encourage on our way to peace, on our pathway to peace, that perhaps there is a space and a welcoming of an anger that can be useful for the regeneration, for the compost needed in our world. I'm going to start by just mentioning something called cognitive imperialism, which is, in a way, when one form of thinking, and I also interpret it as being, even though cognition is generally spoken about as thinking, but if we feel it as a cognition of being, is passed on in the world. And so some of those premises, right, is like the logical way to have reason and logic became the most valued form of intelligence. And then in came, cooking along the way in different moments over the last, let's say, century, a reclamation, And there was many counterculture movements along the way, but recently, over the last 20, 30 years, we've had a particular focus around the rise of the feminine, the descent of the feminine, and the reclamation of the goddess wisdom teachings. And so in this, we find a more mysterious form of intelligence, the kind that listens to subtle energies, that knows something and doesn't necessarily have to have a reason to listen to it, but feels it from a deeper place. The acknowledgement of feelings and emotions, the welcoming of them in spirituality, not as something that we need to disassociate or only witness, but actually listen to give them space in order for them to guide us forward. So all of these are some of like the basics around the reclamation of the feminine. And I think that what has happened often in our current modern culture is a hijacking of very beautiful, powerful movements and intentions. So what I have witnessed, and also what I've experienced, and I'm constantly checking myself and I'm not completely immune to, is that living in a capitalist colonial patriarchal system that also is built around premises and systems of white supremacy, we forget what the feminine actually is in its flavor, and it starts to become a plastic version of itself. It starts to become about a show, about me and my cool friends, about us in our flowing dresses and our whatever, adornments we might wear that look like Isis. Now, because I brought up Isis, and I know one of the other topics here is cultural appropriation appreciation. How can you know Isis if you don't build connections with the people of the land where she was born from? How can you know Isis by having enough money to enter into the king's chamber, which is tens of thousands of dollars, but that woman over there in her hut can't know Isis because she doesn't have the very expensive robe that I'm wearing right now? None of that is the feminine movement. It's not about reproducing what we've understood femininity to be in patriarchy. It's not about some kind of aesthetic beauty that says this kind of symmetrical feature and having some fine materials and designer looks makes you a goddess. In fact, there is no such thing as one version of any goddess. She is as multifaceted, as many faces as there are, as many shapes as there are in the world. The goddess has as many faces and flavors. And so this reduction of the feminine to its superficial form, and also to its comfortable, privileged echo chamber form, that isn't also rooted in a care for the well-being of all. So where I begin to find my roots in the feminine movement is about also matriarchal consciousness. Whether we have children or not, it lives here. If you have children, it's also an initiation to know it even deeper. Matriarchal consciousness is about the well-being, the care, and the love for all life. That is what the initiation into motherhood is about. It's not about a love for me and mine. It's literally an exorcism of selfishness. I think in its pure form, in its natural form. And I do still believe the same can be true, even if you don't have birth, even if you haven't given birth, and even if you don't give birth naturally. It can be true, because it's a wisdom that lives in the womb. And so matriarchal consciousness begins to show us some of the distortions of what we've seen in the feminine movement or the goddess movement. It can help reorient us. So if our circles or our practices are only available to the wealthy, there is nothing revolutionary about them. There is nothing even spiritual about them. If they are only welcoming to those who look and are like me or fit into my idea of cool, there is nothing revolutionary or spiritual about it. if they are stretching us, if they are welcoming of the all, if they are creating a circular consciousness instead of a pyramid consciousness that puts a hierarchy of worth, then we might start to get somewhere. Then we are actually reclaiming the feminine intelligence. And I want to say one more thing about this, which is a prophecy from Turtle Island, where it's been said that the bird of humanity was flying with one wing for a very long time. And that's why we've been flying in circles. And so now we're beginning to fly with the second wing. But we have to be careful, because what we've seen of the masculine it's not actually even patriarchy. What would pater really be like? What would a real father be like? The energy of fatherhood, caring, protecting, elevating, uplifting, togetherness, What we've seen is not actual pater. So we can't then start to distort the feminine to make it palatable within this, in the words of Krishnamurti, profoundly sick society, We're not trying to be healthy in a profoundly sick society. And that requires also being willing to know that it's not a comfortable journey. It's not one that's going to allow us to just receive the accolades or to kind of gain the approval of. It's going to require us to shed some of those things, sacrifice some of those things, to sacrifice sometimes the wealth that you would get if you were doing it differently, to sacrifice also the friends that you might lose for certain positions that you take, for certain ways that you stand up for others who are not you. To me, whether that lives in man, woman, or the entire spectrum in between and beyond, that is a key component to the feminine movement, where spirituality and a care for the world, an activism for the world, merge and meet. There we have some fertile ground to work with. And there's a key warning that I've received, which is we cannot fall into the traps of supremacy either. Then we will be in the same place as we have been for 5,000 years at least. So as we reclaim the feminine within us, no matter our gender, we also have to have the reverence and the love and the respect for the masculine intelligence and begin to marry them inside of ourselves. Begin to listen to the opposite polarity in our lives, who we respect and admire, but also perhaps don't understand fully. To begin to listen to each other, to begin to be willing to acknowledge that, our oneness doesn't have to mean sameness. And I mean this as much for masculine, feminine, men, women, as I do for black, brown, white, and all of the other shades of ethnicity in our world. We can celebrate our difference. We can learn from each other. We can also integrate some of what we respect, admire, and see in the other. We can allow ourselves to be shaped and molded by this ecosystem. And I think then we start to come back into rhythm with how I view nature, which is not actually only as a feminine being. There are, the way that I view what others say Mother Earth, is as a manifestation of the love-making and the balance of the masculine and the feminine. And we can see it in the shapes, in the erect aspects of trees or of cacti. We can see the different manifestations in the flowers, in the softness of the wet earth, and some things that are also queering between all of those things, that are not one extreme or another. And so to me, that aspect also, it allows me to be both in the duality of learning about these polarities, but not being limited and stuck. Just like the yin and yang, they meld and mold into each other. They have an aspect of each other in each other. And so that is also part of it. It's a mysterious thing. It's not a I recently had a conversation with someone where we began in this topic to distinguish between cross-pollination and appropriation. In a sort of strange, or I would say premature assimilation, or an intent to assimilate, or a forced assimilation. So I'm going to focus on cross-pollination because I think that is the healthiest form of doing what we're saying, which is a cultural exchange. There are cultures that have preserved by miracle, by resilience, by resistance, preserved some of the ancient traditions that guide and help the people, that connect the people to the winds, to the waters, to the sky, to each other, to the beyond this world also. It is by, not just by grace, it is by deep suffering. It is by the miracle through that deep suffering that they have preserved it. So for any of us, especially, I have to continue to bring this word, in capitalism, to think that because we can buy a retreat with them, we are now either deserving or the masters of that craft or tradition. Even after 1 or 2 years or 4 years of that, it's not about that. There is a layer that I think in our culture, because we don't have rites of passages, we've sort of forgotten that you do have to earn some things. And it's an earning that is also an earning of deep, I see it as it's a deep, almost like, it's a force of taking the inside of you, all of everything that is both pure and also the shadow aspects of you, offering it again and again to try and come and bring something to gain and continue to spread that word and message. Sometimes indigenous communities living in capitalism will gift things to others that they do not deserve, that they have not earned. And I need to speak this, and I speak it as a brown woman from an indigenous culture that has not just been colonized from Europe, but also from other parts and through fundamentalist religion as well, you know. As a brown woman whose own heritage has been very difficult to even like dig through what is left from the rubble of our pre-Islamic shamanic practices, that of our dances between the women, you know, that were deemed haram, like all of that reclamation has required so much. So if I share that in a workshop and someone goes off and starts to just use it in theirs, it's not even enough to name me. Do not name me. It's not from me. But until you feel in your bones what my people have felt, running for their lives, wondering if their brother, their sister, their father will make it through. My auntie sewing together a gun wound with a shoelace of her friend on a boat. Until you know that, whether through sitting with me, whether through knowing me, through some sort of transmission of an empathetic heart, you do not earn the art or the culture or the craft of those people. And so that is the same energy I wish to bring in my own cross-pollination. Because we do need to resource from each other. It's almost like we're gaining puzzle pieces. We're putting together this thing, and we need what has been preserved over here, what has been preserved over here, to see the miracle, to learn something, a different flavor, you know, and to add it to this beautiful feast, you know, that hopefully humanity will make it through these times. And so as we cross-pollinate, to know that that's the kind of depth of connection, the kind of depth of respect that is required for us to step forward and share, and continue that message forward, to be a voice for those people or for their art or for their wisdom tradition in some way. That's what is required, in my opinion, perspective, and in my heart and in my blood. That's what I feel.